Right.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. So I thought that I'd cover the theories and methods of past paper questions. So I thought that it would be a good idea to cover the past paper questions of other two chapters as well. So in P1, as you all know, that we have theories and methods chapter, which is compulsory, and then we have two other chapters from which you have a choice and you have to answer only one of the question, right? So the first chapter is cultural identity and socialization and social inequality. So like I said, that you have a choice and you have to answer one set of questions. However, in this past paper session, I'll be covering both the chapters because this will help people who are either covering culture or people who are covering social identity to know how to answer each of the questions, right? So moving on with our first topic, which is culture, identity, and socialization. And this is the past paper of May, June 2016. So first of all, whenever you have that paper in front of you, there are 2 to 3 lines that are very important and you must read. So like it's written that in 1981, Anne Oakley conducted a study into socialization in the family. She found children were being taught how to be males and females. Parents use both manipulation and canonization to help children learn their gender identity. So in simple terms, the examiner is saying that both manipulation and canonization were being taught to children in order to introduce them into their specific gender roles. For example, a boy was through canonization and manipulation, a boy was encouraged towards different activities and a girl was encouraged towards different activities. So first question is, what is meant by the term canonization? So canonization is basically where parents give their children gender specific goods that are considered normal for the gender or channeling children towards activities that are considered appropriate for them. For example, because of the gender. So in a 2 mark question, you only have to focus on the term. And I've directly copied these 3 lines from the marking scheme because the examiner had written that you would get full marks if you write such a definition. And to break it down into simpler terms, canalization is really channeling a boy or a girl towards activities that you want them to do. For example, giving them gender specific goods. For example, girls are given kitchen sets or doll houses because it's expected for them that ultimately they have to stay in the house and they have to do the household chores or they have to handle the kitchen or supervise the house. However, boys are encouraged to play sports and they're channeled towards that specific stream of playing sports or going out of the house, or they're given toys like trucks or guns because it's expected of them first to go out and also to be physically strong, right? So this covers the 2 mark question, and if you give a holistic definition, then you will get two marks. Moving on to our 4 mark question. So describe 2 examples of manipulation. So here I'm telling you, I'm also trying to explain how to answer each question and how to get full marks. The examiner himself or herself is telling you that they need only 2 examples, so just give 2 examples, not more, not less than them. If you give less, obviously then you're not going to get full marks. If you give more, then obviously then you are wasting your time. So you also don't have more time, so don't waste your time. What the examiner is asking you, just write that. So when the examiner is saying just give 2 examples, and give 2 examples and describe those examples. So 2 examples of manipulation. So how are boys and girls manipulated into their specific gender roles? First, you need to understand. So for the sake of your understanding, I've written what is manipulation. So manipulation is basically encouragement towards a certain thing or a certain act that you expect of an individual, of a boy or a girl. So first example is how is a girl or a boy manipulated towards certain acts. For example, a girl or a boy, we all know that they are manipulated or they're encouraged to take different subjects. For example, girls are encouraged to do degrees in home economics or take subjects like sociology or take subjects like sociology or economics. However, boys are encouraged to take subjects like physics, astronomy, math, because and they are encouraged to pursue engineering because boys are considered fit for that, and girls obviously they're encouraged, like I said, they're encouraged to carry a degree in home economics because that's synonymous to your household chores, and you will be better able to take care of your household chores, right? This is first example. First example, how our first example of manipulation, that girls and boys are manipulated to take different subject choices and they're given different reasons. For example, a boy is encouraged encouraged to specialize in data, encouraged to specialize in software. So they basically, boys were encouraged to, the mass of boys were now encouraged to do degrees in software engineering because that's a lucrative degree. And that's an explanation for the encouragement for, that's an explanation for the encouragement. For example, they tell the boy that you have to, one day you will have to grow up, you will have to earn for the family, and that's why you need to you need to do a degree that will get you some money. However, the other hand, a girl is told that no, a girl is told that you have to stay at home, and it's a choice that you, it's not compulsory or mandatory on you that you have to go out and earn lots of money, because that responsibility is on the boy. So first, first form of manipulation is taking different subjects. Second form of manipulation, how are boys and girls manipulated into their specific gender roles, is giving them different toys. Like we read the excerpt, and from that excerpt, right. So reading the excerpt is very important. So from that excerpt, you got a hint that given different things. For example, a girl is given kitchen sets or doll houses, and boys are given toys like guns or or cars, or they're encouraged to play outdoor sports, because that's what something expected. Because to each their own gender, each gender is expected, from each gender a different thing is expected in future. So then they're also encouraged towards different activities, right? So the first example that we covered is through manipulation, you encourage boys and girls to take different subject choices, right? And the second form of manipulation is that different, there are different activities or different toys that are given to boys and girls, and then they are also encouraged towards those activities or to play with those toys. And the justification obviously is the same. Girls have to stay in the private home space, and boys have to go out and earn for the family. The two examples, and you explain them, you give a generalized explanation for them, for that, because the two reasons that I've covered, the justification is similar, right? Moving on to our next question, that is a 6 marks question. I've written that also first we read the question. So the question is, explain how agencies of socialization apart from family help to develop gender identity, right? So read the question very carefully. They say that family, apart from family, what are some other agencies of socialization? So I've seen many students who read question in haste, and they think, oh, how is family an important agency of socialization? No. So read it very carefully. They're not asking you how is family an agency, how family is an important agency of socialization. They're asking you, apart from family, what are other important agencies of how other agencies of socialization help develop gender identities in different individuals. So I've written that you need to write 3 properly explained points or more. So 3 points are enough. And if you properly explain them, then you will get full 6 marks, right? So first think, what are some of the agencies of socialization? So first off, we have media, we have education, we have peer group, we have religion. Out of that, if I were to attempt the question, I would select 3 agencies of socialization. Like I said, 3 properly explained. So mention that there are there are different types of agencies. For example, media, education, peer group, and religion. And write first agency. How does media help develop gender identities? Explain that. So for example, in media shows or in media dramas, for example, shows or in soap operas, we see men and women are portrayed differently. So the same answer, the women are mostly shown in the kitchen. They are shown in the kitchen. They're shown in the kitchen cooking or serving at the table or setting the table or taking care of the household chores or supervising the household chores, right? So in media, in different ads, you see women. So you see in cooking oil ads, you don't see men who are standing in the kitchen and portraying the cooking oil in a very good manner. So man is the one who is very tired and they come back from the home, and woman is the one who's cooking with that cooking oil because they have to advertise that cooking oil, and that cooking oil is very good. And the man comes home and eats, and he just gives off that impression that, oh, the food is very yummy. So you see how what is expected of men and what is expected of women in the home space is very different. So the man is not expected to be in the kitchen and cook food for the woman. So woman is there who's cooking food, and men. So you see, like I said, the man is going out and earning for the families. You see mostly men being portrayed in the public sphere, right? So this is how media helps to develop a gender identity. What is expected of man? What is expected of a woman? Secondly, how does religion socialize a man or a woman or or a girl or a boy into specific gender roles? So there are a set of roles and responsibilities that are defined for men and women in terms of religion as well, in terms of different religions. For example, so so everybody has so people come from a lot of different religions, so somebody may be a Christian, somebody may be somebody may be a Muslim. So you specify that to the examiner. For example, in Islam, you see that you see that in Islam, it's defined that the role of men and women is very different. So in Islam, you see that it is obligatory on men to go out and earn the livelihood and feed their family, and women, it's a duty of women to look after their children with the help of their with the help of their husband, who's also providing and sustaining the family. So that's how, and this is something that is passed down to you in your family. This is something that is told to you by your wider society. For example, living in a Muslim society and surrounded by Muslims, as a girl or as a boy, you will be told that this is your responsibility and this is your responsibility. And these responsibilities or these sets of roles and responsibilities that the other person is telling you as a Muslim or as Muslims in the society will be backed up by religious explanations, right? So the explanations of the religious roles and responsibilities that I told you earlier in Islam is something that is dictated by you by the religious society, by the society, by the, for example, by the Muslim society. So that's how religion also helps you develop a gender identity. And then lastly, we see that education, how does education, so in education, you see that in schools, how do schools socialize girls and boys into specific gender identity? For example, you see teachers' attitudes, how are they behaving towards girls, and what are girls mostly told? For example, girls are told to speak quietly, or girls are told to sit with the legs crossed, or they are told to be less rowdy, or more obedient. And boys are not, on the other hand, boys are not, there is less focus on boys' posture or their beauty, and there is more focus. And in the longer life run, in you see in higher education, there is less focus on a boy's so on their outward appearance, right? But we all know that girls, there is more focus on a girl's outward appearance, how their hair are, is it either tied up properly or not. So teachers' attitude also to a very large extent help develop a person's gender identity. What is expected of them, how do they have to behave, right? And then as a girl, for example, a girl internalizes those things that are said to them. For example, you see girls mostly who are quiet. You see girls, I'm not generalizing, but I'm saying mostly, there are exceptions as well. So you see girls who do not sit like boys, obviously. So a different way that boys sit, and girls are told to sit, so with the legs crossed, or who are quiet, or who focus more on their physical appearance. And then also in the educational books, you see different gender messages are sent across. So for example, the first thing is the help develop gender identity. You see different clothes, you see the length of hair. Boys are told to keep their hair short, they're not told to keep their hair long. And the obviously girls are wearing skirts, or in Pakistan you see shalwar kameez, and boys are wearing uh, jeans and shirt. So the clothes or the different attitudes, or what you're told, how you have to speak or how you have to behave, all these things help develop a certain kind of gender identity. So you mentioned these three agencies, give specific examples, and I assure you, you will get full marks. And peer group, so you can also mention another agency of socialization. I excluded that, but for more points, not for more points, but this is optional. So peer group, how people learn their social identity. A person who belongs to who joins a girls peer group, obviously they will have to conform to the expectations of that peer group, right? So for example, a girl who is who joins a girls peer group, and they all like makeup, or they all like a different kind of music, then that person will also try to keep up with those standards, right? Or they're going to be bullied. For example, a boy, for example, you see boys who are part of a specific peer group, they have to keep up with the expectations of being physically strong or being confident, otherwise they may be called sissy, or they may be called, oh, you're too overly emotional like girls. And they may be bullied for that. So the boy is going to keep up with those standards, and this is going to then develop their gender identity, the different specific gender identities. Okay, so now moving on. Moving on to our 8-mark question. So the question is, explain why family is viewed by many sociologists as the most important agency of socialization. So first they've asked you what are the other agencies of socialization that help gender identity. They're focusing more on the family. How is family an important agency of socialization? So over here, the examiner expects you to give 4 or more properly explained points, 4 or maximum 5, right? Not more than that, because like I said, that you do not have a lot of time. And over here, for the sake of your ease, I specifically tagged those points so that you can get a good idea of how to answer the question. So like I explained in my family crash course video as well, family is a place where the child has that first hand contact, right? So you're born in the family, you're first introduced to your family. The family is the primary and basic area where you learn, where you begin to learn. For example, you begin to learn basic things, for example, how to eat, how to sit, how to communicate with people. And this is the time, and this is the place from where your socialization begins. So this is what we call primary socialization. Primary socialization is learning the basic norms and values of the society. For example, you need to be honest, you need to be obedient, you need to be honest, you need to be obedient, you do not have to disobey your elders. So these are basic norms and values: how to sit, how to stand, how to communicate with elders, how to behave in front of other people, right? So this gives you 1 point. And then family socializes you into these specific gender identities, and I've talked about it a lot. For example, giving different toys, encouragement towards different activities, which will give you the second point. And explain those activities, explain those toys. For example, kitchen sets or doll houses given to girls, and cars or guns or going out and encouraged to play sports is for boys. And this helps you develop those. For example, this helps in the socialization of a boy or a girl. Okay, so you're socializing a boy or a girl into in different ways, right? So you're prioritizing pink color for the girl, or you're always buying blue things for boys. So this socializing is socializing an individual to each their own identity. This covers the second point. Third point is that why. So third point is that we're trying to explain the examiner, we're trying to convince the examiner that yes, family is the most important agency of socialization. Because on the flip side, if you see that if there is inadequate socialization, if a child is not taught how to speak, how to behave, how to eat, how to sit in front of different people, or how to talk to different people, then they'll turn like feral children. And this happens due to inadequate children. So the feral children story is that if you leave a child in a jungle, and in a jungle, so experiment was carried out. So if they left a child in the jungle, and in that jungle the child it was observed that the child was behaving like animals. So the child could not walk on 2 feet. The child was eating with their, the child was eating with her or his, I don't know, with their feet, and the child obviously could not speak in human language, right? So this is an example of inadequate socialization. So the basic things the child could not do. So family is the most important because this is the area where the child learns these basic values. And then you give the example of the feral child or the feral children, where they cannot eat, where they cannot sit, where they cannot even walk like humans or walk properly in the society. Your fourth point is that family is the most important agency of self, because in family, family practices social control over you. And what is that social control? Social control is practiced in the form of rewards and punishments, where there is an encouragement of the specific behaviors. For example, a child is encouraged to obey their elders. For example, a child is encouraged to be hardworking. A child is encouraged to keep the room clean. They are encouraged, and the family also gives them reward for them. For example, if I used to clean my room when I was a child, my mom used to appreciate me. She used to make my favorite food, right? So that is something that you're rewarded of, and the child then internalize, oh, then okay, right, this is a good thing. I need to clean my room and I'll be rewarded, and that's something that is appreciated, and social control is then practiced. On the flip side, on the sad side, if a child is disobedient, if the child is being rowdy, if the child is not listening to their parents, and if a child is unnecessarily being stubborn, then obviously there are going to be punishments. And punishments can be harsh or they can be lenient. Mostly we see that in families are lenient punishments. So a parent may not talk to the child, or they may say that you're grounded in your room, or they may take their electronic gadgets. And then in that form, the child is socialized. So socialization, the easier word for socialization is learning. And then the child learns that, oh, these things are not acceptable. Making mess in my room, or disobeying my parents, or disobeying other people, or being rowdy or being stubborn is not expected of me. Then the child internalizes that, oh no, I'm not going to do these things because then I'm going to be punished, right? And then we see that there is a fifth point. There is also regulation of sexual behavior. So a child from a very young age, um, from a very young age is told that certain activities are not encouraged, and they're also kept away from certain specific sense. They're also kept away from so certain specific sensitive topics are not discussed in front of them. For example, there is either sex or death that's not discussed in front of them. And over the course of the time, there's a certain sexual behavior that they learn, or something that's obviously through in interlinked to the social control part. For example, living in a particular society, they learn that yes, I can only have children, or it's appropriate of me to have children once I grow up. For example, a child is also a teenager, right? So a girl, a boy learns through their family that yes, I can only have children once I get married, because that's the socially accepted norm of many societies, of multiple societies. So the end result is that of the first point of the first point, why is family considered as the most important agency of socialization? The first point is primary socialization. The second point is socializing an individual into their own gender identity. Third point is that inadequate socialization, so you may turn into those feral children. Fourth point is that family practice social control over you, and through that you learn specific behaviors that are acceptable and unacceptable. And fifth is the regulation of sexual behavior. And why are all these important? You condense that to one point. The end result is that to make the individual a competent member of the society, so that they can walk, or they can talk to different people in the society confidently, right? So you mentioned these 4 points. You say that to make them the competent members of the society, so that they can move around in the society confidently, as confidently who knows what is good and what is bad, what is acceptable, what is unacceptable in the society. And that's all. And who is to be thanked for, and who's to be attributed to that? It's the family, right? Family plays a very important role, and you justify that to the examiner, right? You convince the examiner. Okay, so now moving on to our last question of this topic, which is to what extent is a person's status ascribed at birth? This is a 15-mark question. So in a 15 marks question, keep that in mind. There's always a for side and there is always an against side. And why is that? Because the examiner always, a 15 marks question will most of the time or majority of the time always starts with the phrase to what extent. To what extent means that there is a possibility and there is also not a possibility. So they say to what extent is a person's status ascribed at birth? For that you need to ideally, so there's a for and against side, and it's totally it's totally your choice which side you want to take, because you always want to take the side with on which with you always want to take the side um, you always want to take the side on which you have more points, right? So I've written write more for the side that you are on, or that you are on. So you need to write more on that side, and if you're on the for side, then write 7 points or 6 points. And if you're on the against side, write 5 points. So in that comparison, the side that you're not on, write less points for that, so that the examiner can know which side you're on, right? So that you can convince them through the evidence that you are providing. So first, let's break down the question. So the question is, to what extent is a person's status ascribed at birth? Ascribed means a status that is given to you at birth, that you cannot change, that is something that you inherit. So define a person's status. Status is a social standing in the society, and like I said, ascribed status give you should understand, you should know the examples of ascribed status, something which cannot be changed. For example, your age, your name, your ethnicity, your race, your sex, your religion, your I don't think so religion comes over here, but you can change religion in the later stage, which I'll be discussing in the against side. And also your physical appearance comes here, right? So let me write that. So your physical appearance also comes there, your eye color, your nose or lips. So something that you cannot change. And they say to what extent, so give the definition of ascribed status, right? That this is something that is given to you at your birth and consequently which you cannot change, right? So person status, how can it be marked? For example, a person who belongs to a upper middle class, upper middle class can access good healthcare, good educational facilities, and good education facilities. It's something it's something that the person has inherited at birth. It's not something that they have achieved, right? But and also a person's status is ascribed at birth. So they give the example of Marxism, where they say that it's difficult to change your class. Like I said, a person belonging to working class, a person belonging to upper middle class, they inherit that class, and they inherit those class opportunities and those life chances and those disadvantages or advantages, and justify it with the example of Marxism, with the example not with the theory of Marxism, where they say that it's very difficult to change your class living or where you're living, or where you're feeding on a capitalistic system, because the capitalistic system inherently reproduces or reinforces inequality, class inequality, and it becomes very difficult to change a system that reproduces, reinforces inequality, uh, to change that system that you are on, and to ultimately change your class or climb up the social ladder, right? So then that status or the opportunities that you have stick to you, then you cannot change them, because like I said, the conditions have not been made. For example, the bourgeoisie are the one who are exploiting the labor force by obviously they're working for more hours, or they given low wages, or because of that fatalistic attitudes, oh, I cannot change my life because that's something that's going to go on and on for the rest of my life. So it becomes really difficult for you to change your class in a system that inherently thrives on reproducing inequality, and you're also part of that system, right? So I hope I'm making sense that then for example, give the examiner an example. If you're trying to convince them for the foresight, then that tell the examiner, then it becomes really difficult to change your class background or to climb up the social ladder, because you're dependent on that very unequal system that exploits you. Secondly, you can also expand on the idea of race or the institutional inequality. Like I said, that capitalism in itself is a very unequal system. Capitalism can only thrive by creating a class divide between the pro-bourgeoisie or the proletariat. Similarly, you see that racism or the idea of race, a person cannot change that. Obviously, they cannot change their race, and with that race, we see that obviously we see the blacks mostly belong to the working class. And why is that? Because they have been pushed to that class, because there is an institutional inequality running in different institutions. For example, they may not be recruited to better jobs or to higher education or to good universities just because of their race, just because of their ascribed status, just because they were born black, right? So something that's ascribed to you, something that you cannot change, and that also determines your life chances, right? So for the foresight, convince the examiners that these things are your ascribed status, and give two examples, like I mentioned, class and race, and tell them this is something that is ascribed, and it's something that you cannot change, even though you want to, but you cannot change. And these ascribed statuses or these ascribed identities, they determine your life chances in the society. But for the against side, right, you can write that no, you can write that no, a person's status can also be achieved. A person can achieve this status. So it's a comparison between achieved and ascribed status. So achieved status is something that you earn out of your hard work, something that you've achieved. Um, for example, I am teaching sociology because I've worked hard to get good grades, which have given me and to get good grades, and I have learned those skills and abilities to teach sociology. It's something that I've achieved. It's not something that was given to me by my parents. It's solely because of my own hard work, right? So discuss the idea of achieved status, climbing up the social ladder. Again, focus on class, because class is very important over here. give the counter Give counter to Marxist ideas. Like I said, that Marxism in the foresight, like I said, that you cannot change your class status because the system in itself is unequal. So give counter the Marxist ideas that no, your status can still be changed because of hard work, and counter it with functionalism theory, where they say that no system is meritocratic, and everybody is given, and a person belonging to working class or a person belonging to upper middle class is there because they have worked hard for generations, right? So their argument is that system is meritocratic, and by meritocratic they mean that system, if you work hard in the system, if you work hard in the system, then you can obviously climb up the social ladder. And you see people working hard, and climbing up the social ladder and improving their living conditions. For example, there are many stories that you hear. For example, a farmer's son worked very hard, then they cleared their civil services exam, and now they are living a very luxurious life, right? So you see, there are examples of how the system is meritocratic, and justify with that no, you can also achieve better, something that class can also be changed. And then there are also other examples as well, where luck also plays a very big role, and also something that you achieve. For example, a working class individual who plays very good cricket, or they work hard, they have been playing cricket for years since they were young. For example, we see many stories of how boys used to play cricket on streets, and then they made their way to the international or to their national cricket team. And then or you see singers who do not even have three listeners, or who do not have so many views, and they worked on their voice, or they struggled a lot, and now they're very famous. And then now they're very famous international singers who are getting a lot of praise, and obviously uh, getting a lot of praise. And also obviously then they hold their own concerts. And then cricketers who go out and play for the countries. Obviously a renowned singer, a renowned cricketer will obviously they will earn more, they will earn better, and then their living conditions will improve, and then which becomes your achieved status, right? So they will not want to be great singers, or they will not want to be famous cricketers or great cricketers, or a great cricketer. They worked hard through their life, and they used their talent, or they polished their talent, and now where they are, it's because they have worked hard or they polished their talent, and their class changes. So the one factor is meritocratic system. Second factor is that you polish your talent, or you work hard on that talent, and then your class status can obviously change. There are also people who are earning digitally and who come from working class. You see living in these modern times on YouTube, you see many people who share the stories that they came from a working class, and then on YouTube they opened their channel, on then TikTok they became very famous, and they got a lot of appreciation and praise and a lot of views, and because of that their page got monetized, or they got these promotional offers, and now they are very rich. So these are very realistic examples how a person's class can change. So this is something that persuades the other person that yes. Another example, that class can be changed through a number of conditions. For example, a man from a working class can get married to a woman from an upper middle class, and vice versa. For example, a woman who comes from the working class can marry an upper middle class, and the conditions can change for both of them on to each their own condition. There are also luck, for example. An individual can win prize bonds or lottery tickets, or and obviously this makes them rich instantly. Then you see that your gender status can also be changed, because your gender status can change because of the, like I said, living in these modern times, we have obviously medical facilities have advanced, and your sex can be changed through operations and surgeries. Radical feminists are proponents of that. uh, uh, Radical feminists are not proponents of that, right? I think I'm this is not correct, but the radical feminists have said a thing like, um, you completely need to change the duty that you're performing now. For example, reproduction. So radical feminists are proponents of the idea that women should not be reproducing, because that makes them parasites on which men feed, and the men basically use women to have children. So I try to link it to radical feminist, but I'm thinking the link is a bit weak. But this idea that sex can be changed through operations and surgeries, and through that your gender status can change, is a very realistic phenomenon. We've seen that around here, where boys are turning into girls or girls are turning into boys, right? Because of their own psychological issues. Then you see that how religion can change over the course of your life. So you see people, we have seen real life examples of converts. You see people begin to explore other religious teachings. They, for example, they may be they may be studying Islam, and then they come across to other religions like Judaism or Christianity, and they may figure out, oh, this one is correct, this one guides in a much better way, or I'm inclined to more of that religion or this religion. And for example, a person who may be practicing Christianity, after reading the Quran, they may turn to Islam, or they may become a practicing Muslim after you begin to explore other options. So then your religious status, which to a larger extent is ascribed at your birth, because you are a young individual, you don't know what's going on. But once you grow up, then obviously that religion then becomes your achieved status, because you yourself work hard um, and try to explore different religions, right? So I think that's pretty much covered, and I hope this helps. Right, moving on to our moving on to our last topic. So first, like I said, read the excerpt. So the excerpt is, so that's social inequality. The concept of underclass is used in everyday speech to describe people living at the margins of the society who rely on state benefits to make ends meet. However, the concept has been rejected by many sociologists such as Charles Moret. They have focused on the cultural deviancies of the so-called underclass, blaming them for their situation. So you see that if you read the excerpt, the questions that you're going to read after that, the questions are also going to be interlinked somewhat to that. And this excerpt is going to just give you an idea, give you a taste of how the questions will be like. For example, if they're discussing underclass and you see right on your that, so you see on so you see that 2 marks question is on underclass. So the question is, what is meant by the term underclass? Simple way to score 2 marks is give 2 marks, 2 points, and only define or focus on the term, and you will get full 2 marks. So the underclass is a group. So you mention all these points in a more succinct, in a more good manner. I've just given you a basic outline. So the underclass is a group living at the margins of society. I read the marking scheme, and in that they've written, if the child only writes, if the student only writes, underclass is a group, or underclass is a class who only lives at the margins of the society, they'll only give you 1 mark, right? Partial marks. So explain that. Is a class that lives at the margins of society, is a class is something is a class that is a group that is excluded from the mainstream society, is a group that is most disadvantaged, who cannot even afford the basic necessities of life. What are the basic necessities? For example, food, water, and shelter. And there are also class that live below the poverty. They live below the poverty line and also live below the working class, right? So give 2 points. For example, living at the margins of society, and they're the most disadvantaged group because they cannot afford the basic necessities of life, and give those examples, and you'll get full 2 marks. Give those examples of the basic necessities of life: food, water, and shelter. Moving on to our moving on to our 4-mark question. Again, give only 2 examples in a 4-mark question. A 4-mark question is describe 2 forms of social stratification apart from class. Apart from class, again, like we covered in earlier in the cultural identity socialization chapter, right? So you see that apart from class, we have age, we have class, we have gender, we have ethnicity, we have class. I pick 2 and describe those, right? Right, let me see, I want to see something over here. Okay, I'm going good. Sorry for that interruption. So describe 2 forms of social stratification apart from social class. So, oh no, this is something that's wrong. So it's gender, it's not class. I knew there was something wrong. Let's just write ethnicity. Ethnicity. I'll explain that. So apart from class, that was my mistake. I didn't so sorry. But so first is that we're humans and we make mistakes, but yeah, I feel so bad for writing class and then also explaining that you have to write apart from class. But yes, you need to focus that you need to explain 2 other forms apart from social, apart from the class. So the first is gender. How are people divided along the gender lines? Men and women, for example, women, for example, women are expected to stay in the private home space and carry out the household chores or supervise the household chores, and men are basically going out and earning for the family, and they're encouraged, and you mostly see men in the public spaces, or in some of the public sectors, for example, like law or engineering or politics, right? So they're mostly dominated by men, and this is how men and women are stratified. So man is going out and they're basically dominating the public sphere, and women are the one who are staying back at home, and they are dominating the private sphere. So there's a stratification, there is a difference between men and women, and stratification is also along the levels, is also on the basis of how you see that feminism say that our society in itself is very patriarchal. So what is patriarchy? Patriarchy is where men are dominant in the society, and in the public sphere you see men who are dominant over women in the public space, or in different fields, like I mentioned, in law or in engineering. So you see how men and women are stratified along gender lines. What are the roles and responsibilities they are performing, and who is the one who's dominating the public sphere, right? Then we come on to ethnicity, different forms of stratification. What are the different types of ethnicity? So there are people who belong to Afro-Caribbean, or who belong to or who are South Asians, and they are stratified based on the different cultural based on the different cultural practices, or different languages, or different histories that they have, or different genealogies that they have. For example, South Asians will will have will have a different kind of a culture than the Afro-Caribbeans, right? And Afro-Caribbeans will be performing different kinds of cultural activities or different kinds of cultural festivals. And South Asians, obviously there is a variation of the activities that they perform, but this is also an example of how people are divided along ethnic lines based on their culture, based on the different activities that they are doing. And also there is also stratification along the line of age. You see stratification, you see in the form of childhood, what is expected of children. I explained that in a lot of detail in my crash course video. Children do not have the rights and responsibilities like adults do. Children are expected to go to school. They're expected to indulge in other playful activities or extracurricular activities. Adults are expected to earn their livelihood and sustain the family. And their grandparents role, mostly in the industrial society, mostly in the society that we're living, is that they're co-parenting, or they are, in some cases, they're sustaining the adults. They can, so and grandparents are mostly seen as old people who are retired. So this is a form of stratification. So stratified along the age, because stratified along the lines of age, which defines their roles and responsibilities in the society. For example, children, like I said, are expected to go to children. Adults, like I said, are expected to earn. Grandparents, like I said, expected, or they are seen who are retired and who are co-parenting with the children if they want to, or if they don't want to, or they just enjoy, or they retired, or they just, we see that they're just hanging out with their other old friends and spending their time. So this is something. So people are also stratified along the lines of people. So you see the different ways in which people are stratified, different forms, sorry, in which people are stratified. For example, the gender lines, there are ethnicity lines, there are age lines, right? So mention two examples. Give, for example, if you choose gender or if you choose age, explain that properly, 2 points, explain that properly, and you will get full marks. Moving on to a 6-mark question, explain how social class might affect a person's life chances. I've written 3 properly explained points or more. I'm again and again repeating that in a 6-mark question, you need to write 3 points and properly explain them. That will give you 6 marks, right? So the division is as follows: 2, 2, 2. One point gets you 2 marks. Fully explained 1 point gives you 2 marks, and 3 will get you 6 marks. So social class. So you see social classes relationship with life chances. So how might a person's social class affect a person's life chances? Life chances are the opportunities or things that one can access over the course of their life. For example, the opportunities are things like opportunities or like schooling, health, home, transport, higher education, food, other luxuries, etc. And belonging to a certain class will obviously affect the kind of life chances that you have, or affect the kind of opportunities that you have. So how can it affect? A person from a working class in Pakistan will attend a public school because the family does not have enough resources to send them to a high fee paying school, right? So you see firsthand, you see primarily class is dictating your life chances. A person in Pakistan who belongs to working class uh, will not have resources, will not have money to send a child to a private school, so they will go to a public school. They will have less life chances to enter into the higher education because obviously working class, because obviously we see that in Pakistan there's a lot of poverty, and it's very difficult for a working class, for a lower working class, to send their child to school and to even to get that basic education. And once they get that education, once they get that basic education, they just look for that, they just look for this instant gratification. And they it's mostly a trend that lower working class children leave their education early in their inter or in their metric, and they start to earn early in order to bear the home expenses, because the family cannot, because there are a lot of, because there are a lot of family members, and a single person cannot bear all the family expenses. So then mostly it's the male who either carries on their education and also earns for the family, and most of the time they leave their education and they enter into a job, they start a job to bear the home expenses. So class determines your life chances, how you're going to live your lives, right? Second, a working class individual lacks the cultural and social capital that is needed to succeed in an educational setting. For example, now what is cultural capital? Cultural capital was a concept that was introduced by Pierre Bourdieu. And Pierre Bourdieu said that there are other factors that affect you apart from the monetary benefits that you have, right? So, for example, a person a person who comes from, or an individual who comes from the upper middle class will have that educational counseling to succeed in school. For example, it will be to some extent all sorted out for them in comparison to the working class individual, that what is going to be their aim, from which university or from which college they're going to graduate, and then from which university they will pursue, what are the different procedures that you need to take. And why is that? That's because that's because the upper middle class parents, you see, because and that's because the upper middle class parents are educated, because they've also been through that process, and then they transfer that process to their child, right? They talk to them, they tell them that these are different universities that you can apply to, this is good for you, this is bad for you. However, on the flip side, a working class parent will not have that cultural capital, because they will not have they've not been through that process. Why? Because they had to leave their education early, they had to earn from the family, or sometimes they didn't even go to school. So how will they know about that whole procedure? How will they carry out the educational counseling? So at that point, so that individual at that point lacks that cultural capital to succeed, to exploit more of the chances that they have, right? And then also the social capital, a working class individual will not have more social capitals to in the higher society, in the education society, than an individual from the upper middle class, because because they've been through that process, and then they also either land up in these different occupations, for example, being doctors, engineers, or being teachers. So that and working in those sectors, they develop links, and through the links they can help the child. Through the links they get to know more about these sectors, more about how they work, and then they can transfer it to their child, and then the child can learn from them, right? So this affects the child's opportunities and life chances to succeed further. Then you have healthcare. Healthcare is all around the world, mostly around the world. You see that healthcare is divided along two lines: the public and the private. Public is for the poor people, and private is for the people who come from the upper middle class or who are rich people. And a person, it's very simple that they have asked that how can class affect a person's life chances. A person from a lower working class who's not earning much will obviously can access the public healthcare facilities and the cheaper medical facilities, and then all their life is also at stake because of the financial resources that they have, right? So this determines their life chances in the society, and also their life their life. And also, not funnily enough, but I'm being very sarcastic over here, but their lifespan as well. Then we have housing, the locality that you're living in. You see people who mostly living in people living in societies or in gated communities are people who belong to the upper middle class, who have stable incomes, who earn more. So they're living in those gated communities where their houses, it is a strictly demarcated residential area where you only have houses, there are no factories. Planned, it is planned. You have schools, you have parks, you have mosques, and mostly we see now people upper middle class are moving into these gated communities, away from the busy, hustling and bustling city space, which is where at the same time you also, there is a factory nearby your house, so there can be a very busy school nearby your house. So there's no plan. The school needs to be over here, park needs to be over here, and you're situated in that kingdom. Right, so moving on to the transport, this is also dictated by your class, the class that you belong. For example, you see working class, lower working class, who have to travel into these buses and vans, who are very crowded because of their class, because they cannot afford their own private car, their own air-conditioned private car. So they have to take those buses and vans, and this also affects your obviously life chances, the time that you are reaching, what kind of life that you're living, and the conditions that you're living in, right? Now, moving on to 8-mark questions. This was a very easy question. Explain why it is believed that underclass are to blame for their own situation. I've written points very briefly because these are very self-explanatory points, and so they self-explain themselves, and you can obviously understand it by yourself. But just to run through them, so give 4 or more properly explained points, and that will get you full 8 points. So underclass are to blame for their own situation. Firstly is the fatalistic attitudes, that hopelessness, that my conditions will never change and I'm always going to live like that. And that's also passed on to that individual, and link it to the idea of instant gratification, where you say that, oh, my conditions are not going to change, then it's not useful for me to go into education. I can just earn like my father did. So the rhetoric that you hear, that a father's son will a farmer's son will also be a farmer, and then a mechanic's son will also be a mechanic. So their conditions will never change because of that fatalistic attitude, right? So one, because they are to blame because of this fatalistic attitude. Second, because they are dependent on state welfare, and here comes the new right criticism, that because they're dependent on the welfare, it perpetuates the cycle of poverty, where they are not encouraged to work, and they are sustaining, or they are carrying on their lives or their household on their welfare, and they're not, and this obviously does not improve their conditions, because that's aid, and it does not help you in any way in the short term or in the long run. And they have that anti-work attitude. The underclass is assumed, underclass are people who are not working, and there's an anti-work attitude that runs through them, and and underclass people are mostly involved in drugs and in crimes, which obviously gives sociologists a very good reason that why are they blamed for their own situation, because they are the ones who are involved in these illegal things, and they're not ready to even change their conditions. Third, we see illiteracy. So underclass people, like I said, they buy the idea of instant gratification. They sociologists claim that they want to stay illiterate, and obviously a person who's illiterate and a person who's involved in crimes and drugs is going to stay unemployed is going to be unemployed legally, right? And then they're going to be again, this gives another reason to sociologists to blame the underclass for their own situation. Lastly, we see that another reason that underclass are blamed to be in the condition that they are in is because of the lack of proper socialization. They see lack of working role model in the family. For example, they see that their parents are not working, or they're involved in thefts, or their parents are relying on state funds, or they see that fatalistic attitude that my conditions will never change, or there is utter hopelessness that I want to change my conditions. So there are different reasons. You can quote 4 of them and explain them. First is fatalistic attitude, second is dependent on state welfare, third is crimes and drugs, interrelated to the anti-work attitude, fourth is illiteracy, that and link it to the instant gratification. So illiteracy can be linked to the fatalistic attitude and the instant gratification argument. And lastly is the lack of proper socialization, which is again passed down to the working, which is again passed down to your child. And then the conditions never improve. Moving on to our last question for this session, which is, to what extent is wealth the main cause of inequality? Right? Okay. So write more, like I said, write more on the side that you're on, that you want, the side that you want the examiner, that you want to decide on. So sorry. So write more points for the side that you're on and the side that you want to convince the examiner, right? So ideally, like I said, that you decide that you're on, write 7 points for that or 6 points for that, and decide that you're not on, write 5 points for that. If you have more points, write 6 points for that, 6 points for that. So keep an imbalance between that of 1 to 2 points, so that the examiner can know which side you're taking. To what extent is wealth the main cause? So for the 4 side, understanding the question is very important. Okay? So for the 4 side, you understand that there is a relationship between wealth and inequality. And you need to understand what is meant by the term wealth. Wealth is very different from income. Income is the liquid money that you get. Income is the money that you get. Wealth is something that you have in the form of possession. Wealth is something that you have in the form of possessions. For example, you have land, you have houses, you have expensive buildings, expensive paintings, you have gold. It's your wealth. You've stored it, and then if you sell your wealth, it can be turned into money. And wealth, people who have more land, people who have more gold, or people who have these expensive paintings are said to be rich because they have more possessions. And how can wealth lead to inequality? So rich people from rich families. So rich people from rich families, they inherit more wealth, right? Obviously, a person who comes from a land owning family is going to inherit that land from their father or from their grandfather, right? And then the inequality, and consequently, this is going to create an inequality between the rich and poor. A rich person coming from a land owning family will have more lands and will have more wealth, and this will give them more status because they on their land, peasants are working and they are earning their livelihood, so this creates a very clear distinction between the rich and the poor. Rich have the buying power because they can sell their wealth, they can buy anything, and this gives them a higher status, again, which creates an unequal society, right? Then you see that people with more wealth have more life chances to succeed. They can, obviously, they have wealth, they can, once they sell off their, for example, their piece of land, they can construct a good house, and then they can their children can afford good quality education, right? Then you have people who come from the royal family, and there is a status difference because of the different wealth or different privileges that they have. So wealth creates an inequality between the royal family and the people who are serving them. And Marxism says that how wealth creates inequality, wealth leads to inequalities because of the bourgeoisie, because bourgeoisie, by earning lots and lots of money, can create wealth. They're amassing wealth by how are they amassing wealth? By exploiting the proletariat, by giving them low wages and more, and and they're also forced to work. They're also forced to work more working hours and then exploited fully. And this gives more profits, and through this, the bourgeoisie are able to maximize on the profit, and they're also able to earn more wealth, which creates a more unequal society. And on the again side, we see that there are other factors as well that may lead to inequality. For example, the gender inequality, which is put forward by feminists, who say that there is an inequality along the lines of gender, men and women. How men are women are mostly the victims of domestic violence or rape, because men are the ones who are abusing them. So there's a gender inequality along those lines. Or women or men are the ones who are preferred in different sectors rather than women.
there is a glass ceiling present in different job markets, where women cannot succeed because of the marriage duties and because of the childcare responsibilities. There is also gender equality because of the double burden and because of the triple burden. I've explained that. So the triple burden is the women face that, mostly women face them in the form of paid work, unpaid work, and also the emotional care labor that they carry out in the home space. And the double burden is the unpaid work and the paid work that women carry out in the home space and also in the public space, which creates inequality between men and women, because men only have to go out and earn for the family. Then there is racial inequality, which manifests itself in the form of health, education, and workplace inequality. The institutional racism, the idea of institutional racism, that is said that whites are preferred more to blacks because of their skin color, because blacks are stereotypes as people who are not so capable or not so achieving. Then we see that functionalism say that no wealth creates no inequality. We live in a meritocratic society, and individual can work on their own and earn the status. People we see an unequal society based on the idea of disability. People because of certain disabilities are cannot perform certain tasks, or they are disadvantaged, or they're not or they are discriminated because of the disability that they have, and they're not given equal chances to succeed, or their disability is not taken into account, which creates an unequal society. We see that wealth, apart from wealth, a talented person can counter class inequalities. For example, a person may not have wealth, they may not have those land, those gold savings or other possessions, but based on their talent, for example, they sing so well or they play cricket so well, they can counter these class inequalities, and um, they can obviously they can counter these class inequalities. And lastly, we see that class inequalities are not only created by wealth is not only the main cause of class inequality. I don't think so. This point should be over here because they're asking not to counter. Sorry, this is my mistake. They're asking that what other factors can create class inequality, and this factor is not over here. What other factors? So this is also not going to be over here. Right. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope this helps. And please like and subscribe my channel. And I really want to reach 1K subscribers, and I know everybody, all of you will help me to reach those 1K subscribers. That's my target for now. And thank you so much again, and I'll be waiting for your feedback, that's both positive and negative. And I'm so sorry for all the mistakes that I've done in while preparing these slides. So apologies for that, and thank you so much for listening. Okay. Right.